I'm going to talk about the traditional Chinese martial arts uniforms. There are some people who make quite a big deal out of it. I've had this woman trolling me. She's kind of made it her business to troll me, first on YouTube, more recently on Instagram. And she's kind of said anything that's come into her head a lot of the time, but one of the things she's really gone on about is the clothes that I wear, both to train and, you know, in my videos. And yeah, I mean, she has said that I'm just ruining the whole of Choi Lee Foot with the clothes that I wear for practicing and stuff in. Oh, to have that power. Anyway, but she's not the only one. I mean, there was a guy who asked me in a private message why I never seemed to wear those clothes. He wasn't being aggressive or nasty about it, he's just kind of interested. He seemed to think it was kind of odd, and yeah, right, like when Neil Wilcott resigned from the Plum Blossom Federation in December 2014, one of the criticisms that was made of him in the wake of that was that he doesn't wear those traditional Chinese martial arts uniforms, or his students don't wear them. And yeah, I mean, it seemed a bit strange to me, but that was a thing that was brought up. Now, I've never worn this uniform, the traditional thing, because when I first went to lessons with Neil Wilcott in 2012, he just introduced t-shirts as the uniform with the logo and sash. And that seemed fair enough to me because, you know, we do normally wear t-shirts to do sporting activities. So I don't particularly see anything wrong with it. I can remember some people making a few comments. I think I got the impression that some people were a bit resistant to wearing the t-shirts, but I didn't really think it was that big a deal at the time. When he resigned, it turned out it was. Like, the only time I've actually known Neil himself expressing a view on it, it was in a magazine, interview for a Spanish magazine, where he said that he felt it's kind of ridiculous for him as a 21st century Englishman to be wearing 19th century Chinese gentleman's clothes, which I kind of think is fair enough. What I would like to talk about is this really necessary? Do we really need to wear those clothes? Are they really the traditional clothes that they wore? Now the thing is that a lot of what we think of as traditional martial arts, not just Chinese, just across the board, was sort of invented or reinvented in like the 1960s and 70s. Now, obviously, Choi Lee Foot does genuinely go back to the mid-19th century, but, you know, a lot of the stuff that we are told about traditional martial arts, it was just like made up by some guys in the 60s and 70s who wanted to look cool and seem more authentic. And I kind of thought this was probably one of them, so I decided to look into it. Now, I actually, first thing I'd like to show you is this. Now, this is a video of Sifu Brian Cuttle, or as he pronounces it, Sifu Cuddle. Who am I to question how a man pronounces his own name? Now he's here, Choi Lee Foot Kung Fu, Long Fist, 1950s style. I've always loved the Kung Fu footage of masters from the 1950s and 60s. Often demonstrators were not in uniform, but their everyday clothes. Even then, they were brilliant, blah, blah, blah. So, he has gone to the trouble of making a whole video, right, based around the fact that there was a time when people didn't really wear those, and it was in the 1950s. You know, and it's a great video, but, you know, this is, he's making it very clear this is not what was worn when people demonstrated. So, you know, this is what was worn, not the Chinese martial arts uniform. Now, this isn't just like some guy who thinks he's really cool because he's learned a few tricks and, you know, thinks he can just call himself a Sufi. You know, this is Dr. Wong's golden boy. He's like his number one man, and with good reason. You know, he is brilliant. He's devoted a lot of time to his craft, and, you know, it would only be someone who had devoted a lot of his time to his craft who would come up with something like that. So, and, you know, and he's very appealing. Oh, I find that so annoying. I'm just going to go off on a bit of a tangent here. Like, I mean, there are good reasons why he is, like, in the place that he is, and he's very appealing. He's such a draw, I'm sure, for both men and women. And he just, like, he does come across as so nice, and it bugs me quite a lot, because you don't do martial arts because you're some nice fluffy person who would never hurt a fly. You do martial arts because you can do kicks like that and you want to, okay? That's why you do martial arts. And when people are kind of projecting a lot of niceness, you do really, you know, in martial arts particularly, you do really want to be careful about it. I mean, and it's not just him, there's quite a lot of people in martial arts who do that. I mean, they're in my own backyard, and not just my dearly beloved teacher Neil Wilcott, there's a few of them around, and, you know, if you see them on social media, maybe, you know, projecting a lot of stuff like, oh, look at how much I love my dogs, and oh, look how vegan I am, and oh, look how down with white people with dreadlocks I am, because even black people don't like them. You know, that's a massive amount of projection, and to be honest with you, it's bollocks, because you know, if you were really this kind of fluffy, hippy dippy fairy flower person, right, you'd never have gone to a martial arts lesson. You just, like, stick to painting pictures of bluebells and butterflies, okay? I mean, I have to. You know, it's not like I claim to be always unfailingly nice, and you can't be. You can't get to be anywhere in martial arts or do anything in martial arts if you never ever do anything that somebody finds quite difficult. You know, I mostly think of myself as just standing my ground, but you know, I have had to twist the knife on a number of occasions just to get people to leave me alone. And you definitely don't get to be that guy and be as nice as he seems on social media. You know, if someone's projecting a lot of niceness when they're doing martial arts, there's a fist of steel behind that. Probably with retractable spikes, you know, with poison on the tips. You've really got to be careful about that. I just felt like need to get that one clear. But anyway, thing is, right, like I said, he's like quite, you know, he's quite the man there, and he is showing us, made a whole video showing us that people in Choi Li Fut didn't always wear those Chinese martial arts uniforms. So, what did they wear? Now, I actually found it a little bit difficult to find exactly the right thing. I typed Chinese martial arts Chinese clothing, traditional 19th century, and it was quite hard to get up. In the end, I managed to find this picture here. See, a bunch of guys wearing these tunics. It's called the Chang Shan, and that's the male thing, and it's traditionally worn for formal pictures and weddings and other formal Chinese events, okay? So, this is the thing that we're talking about here, alright? And I did manage to find some images of it on Bing, after all. And, yeah, so that's what they would have worn, okay? So for a start, that's wedding clothes, okay? That's the Chinese 19th century equivalent of a tailcoat. And that's what people are saying you should wear when you do your traditional martial art, Chinese martial arts. So that seems really stupid and wrong to start with. Then another thing, these are all men, okay? These are men wearing these. They're very binary in their thinking about male and female. So yes, men would have worn these, but oh look, this is what women would have worn. So to have women wearing these that's really inappropriate too. That's not really what would have happened. So what would they have weren't? And another thing is, right, this is the Qing dynasty. The Qing dynasty was the Manchurians who conquered China from the north. It was a country north of China, sort of between Siberia and Mongolia. And they were pretty brutal to start with about forcing people to wear their clothes and their styles. I mean, men were executed regularly for like not shaving the front of their heads to make the queue. And so this is just, you are kind of also wearing the clothes of Manchurian overlords. I mean, by the time of Chang Hung, I think they were less brutal about it. They weren't executing people for wearing the wrong clothes by that point. But yeah, this is clothing that was forced on the Chinese. So again, that doesn't really seem right. The fact that they got used to it by the time of Chang Hung's time, I'm not entirely sure is reasonable, to be honest with you, to think that makes it okay. So, what did they wear? Well, here we have a little interesting presentation. Peasant clothing. Now you've got to remember that the Chinese martial arts and most traditional martial arts were created by people of the lowest classes because they needed to defend themselves against brutal regimes. So, clothing varied by class, season and region. People of the lower class wore clothes made out of hemp. Now the thing is, okay, and then later on they wore cotton because it's softer and lighter and cheaper. Now the thing is that those tunics, those Chinese martial arts uniforms, we usually see as a sort of silk effect. It won't actually be silk because that's really expensive, but it's usually a sort of silky effect because you think of Chinese as wearing silk. But the thing is, that's an expensive material. So the peasant classes, they wouldn't have been able to afford that, so they wore hemp. And besides, it was a better for working in fields. So, to start, so then, this is the Chinese peasant clothing, okay? So this is kind of the thing that we're thinking of here. And, you know, that was good for working in fields. And to be honest, that would be a lot better for training in than those Changshans, really. And another thing, okay? Colours. The colours, it was very strict. They're very strict about colours as well. The colours people wore represented their mood. Only the emperor was allowed to wear yellow. Okay, now, if you've got, say, a Choi Li Fut Grandmaster, let's call him Dok Fai Wong, who pretty much always wears yellow Changshangs to perform and stuff in. That's really inappropriate. That's the colour of the emperor that we're talking about here. Chang Hung was of the peasant class, was of the lower classes, okay? The emperor would have killed Chang Hung on sight, okay? That is the colour of the vicious overlord who, you know, and Chang Hung, okay, he wasn't the revolutionary that, like, Zhong Yin was, but he did have to run off to, you know, go into exile into Hong Kong to escape death threats from, you know, the people in charge. So, I don't think, it's just so inappropriate for someone who's trying to make themselves out to be the earthly representative of Chang Hung to be wearing yellow. He would never have worn that. He wouldn't have been allowed to wear it. And it was the colour of this vicious man who was brutally oppressing them. And, you know, I have no doubt that Dok Fai Wong does that on purpose. You know, I'm sure he knows all about the colour of the emperor and the mythology of the yellow emperor being godlike and stuff. I'm sure he does that on purpose. Okay, so peasants mainly only wore blue and black. So obviously, if you're going to wear something that's traditional that they would have worn, that's really the colour you should wear. People wore red, they were happy. I think it's a lucky colour, and you know, they wore red wedding dresses and things like that. White symbolised sadness and was worn when someone died and at funerals. So I have seen a lot of these traditional Chinese martial arts uniforms in white. That's really inappropriate because that's funeral colours you're wearing there. If you're trying to be like traditional Chinese martial artist and what they wore, that white's wrong. They wouldn't have done that. So yeah, there we go. So right, now I am not saying it was never appropriate to wear these, okay? If you're, say, doing a lion dance at a wedding, that's fair enough. It's possible they could have stretched to silk for special occasions, but it's most likely they would have been made of cotton. So, yeah, or a banquet or something like that. But for heaven's sake, don't wear white, okay? That's funeral colours. Yeah, and I don't... See, I'm not going to say you should never wear those clothes, okay? Because, you know, there are going to be times when it is appropriate, but you really need to think about, like, whether or not it's appropriate for each occasion. Now, I wear clothes that are appropriate for me. You know, I'm a 21st century white English woman, and to be honest, the idea of wearing clothes from the 19th century Chinese times is just really wrong to me, because, you know, I mean, we have this whole issue with cultural appropriation, and now in an ideal world none of this would matter. You know, it wouldn't matter what clothes we wore, what hairstyle we had, or anything like that. None of it would matter. But the problem is that we live in a world where there is massive power imbalance. It's mostly in favour of white Westerners, and you know, historically England specifically did go and mess up China. You know, there's the Opium Wars, and Chan Hung was kind of living through that. So it doesn't really seem right for me to kind of try and dress like a China woman, make out I'm Chinese and stuff. It's just really, it doesn't seem right to me. But you kind of need to think about what you're doing, what's appropriate, okay? I wear clothes that are appropriate for me. I don't think I would never have thought those tunics were good for training in anyway, because they've got these long sleeves. I don't like long sleeves for training in. Okay, so if you want to wear traditional Chinese clothes for training in, do your research, okay? It's not necessarily just Chinese. I mean, a lot of the other traditional clothes aren't necessarily that traditional, really. So do your research, okay? And absolutely do not expect anyone to wear what you might think of as traditional Chinese martial arts clothing, because it's bollocks. It's probably not even real.